Hello, Reverend David Pylon, St. Valentinus Gnostic Church, here again to continue the lecture series, I guess you could call it, on the Valentinian and Marcosian Gnosticism. As you can see in the background here, we've moved into my home office. Please forgive the noise. I've got the air conditioner running behind me and washer running out there. So hopefully you can hear me. I'll try to speak a little more loudly and clearly. So today I wanted to get into the magic and mysticism of the Valentinian and Marcosian schools, specifically as it was taught, or we believe to have been taught by Valentinus and Marcus Magus themselves. If you go and watch the other videos, as I've said before, it should give you some context that'll help put some of what I'm talking about here in perspective. So this is a subject we don't necessarily know as much about. A lot of what we believe we've reconstructed from the documents that we do have. There are some Roman histories and other documents that we can make guesses or speculations based on. So I'll start with Valentinianism and Valentinus. So it was purported that he was known for doing basically like an ancient form of personality testing. He was big into the concept of the idea that there's like four basic different dispositions of types of people there are. And in the ancient world, this took the form of elemental alignment. So you have the four elements: earth, water, fire, air, and these were supposedly what we're made up of, at least in spiritual sense, if not a literal one. Which I don't believe he necessarily believed that in a more literal sense. I think it was just symbolic to them, and it was supposed to correspond or correlate to different types of people. This is kind of an ancient concept that still exists in the world today. It's common belief that there's basically four main different types of personalities or dispositions or temperaments that people come in. And you have like different versions of this. There's the four elements. There's the four houses in Harry Potter. There's the true colors is another version of it, and so on. So basically, he would do an ancient form of this. He'd give anybody who joined his church, he'd give them this personality survey that they'd have to fill out. We don't know exactly what was on there. It was probably less about psychology as we think about it today, probably more about kind of like the correspondences and correlations, stuff like which is your favorite season, fall, winter, spring, summer, pick your favorite color, which in the Gnostic tradition, and the four elements, the four colors for them, that corresponded to them were green for earth, yellow for air, red, of course, for fire, and blue for water. So it might have been like it was either a multiple choice, pick your favorite one, or it was a ranking, rank most favorite to least favorite, is either or one of those. And so we don't know exactly what, like I said, it was probably stuff more like seasons, time of day, dawn, noon, dusk, midnight. Colors, the four colors I just said, and so on and so forth, and possibly also your birth month or star sign, and if you were male or female, and so whatever the different questions were, you would fill that out. He would grade it. He'd come back and he'd say, okay, you have this percentage or proportion of each element. He'd break it down into your total, that you have a combined total. You're not just one, that you're a combination of all four, but you have them in different proportions to each other. So it'd be like you're this much fire, this much water, so on and so forth. And then he would give like tailored advice based on that, where he'd say, you don't have enough earth, go garden. You have too much fire, go bathe in a like cool running stream. Things like that. That would help you to balance those elements. And so that was one of his main things, and that's the main magical, mystical concept he seems to get into that's not very biblical. The other thing he was big on talking about, which I've mentioned multiple times before in the other episodes, whatever you want to call these, is that he would talk about holy numbers, and he'd provide kind of like biblical and apocryphal evidence or support for this, that there'd be numbers of significance, and he'd break down what do they symbolize. Well, 1 is for the one God, 2 is for things that divide into twos, so mainly like the yin and yang in Eastern tradition, which, as I mentioned before, I believe he absorbed some of, that he came in contact with that, and this is a controversial opinion, it's not commonly accepted, but I think the evidence supports it, in my opinion, that he came in contact with Taoism, and saw similarity between that and Kabbalah, which he grew up in a Jewish tradition, so he saw that they had these similarities, and based his version of Gnosticism based on that. So 2 is for the yin and yang, masculine, feminine, light, dark, left, right, so on and so forth. 3 is the Holy Trinity. 4, the 4 elements, and then also the 4 seasons, 4 directions, 4 archangels, so on and so forth. And then 12, the 12 apostles, 12 months or star signs, and then 12 can also be broken down into the other numbers. So you can break bigger numbers down into smaller groups, and everything that is within a numbered group has a correlation or correspondence to everything else that is within that numbered group. So anytime you see things that are in groups of 3s in the Bible, he would say, well, this is correlated to the Holy Trinity, and so on and so forth. He'd say this is correlated to that, or corresponds to this, and he'd break down his interpretation or analysis of what he thought things were most likely related to. He'd be like, well, this concept is most likely related to this concept, and so on, based on their numbered patterns. That was his second biggest principle or belief, and that's basically the most of what we know for sure about the Valentinian system or school. It was a belief in personality testing and elemental correlations or correspondence with that, and a belief in kind of a biblical based numerology where it's things are broken into number groups that have these correlations or correspondences to one another, and those were the main things he seems to have been into. The Marcosian system, on the other hand, gets way more complicated due to Marcus Magus being the student of Valentinus and then integrating other beliefs and other concepts from other religions and cultures. He kind of came to his own conclusions of how things work, So in his system, we know even less about it relatively. We kind of do know a lot about what he believed, but we don't know his specific magical teachings per se, except kind of by rumor and conjecture, because some of them supposedly, allegedly, wind up in later teachings, like in grimoire or books of magic, because some of his followers immigrate to Europe, and they have descendants who record some of these ideas. But you had to be an initiate. You had to go through the whole entire process that I mentioned in the previous recording about doing the rites and rituals of initiation and ascension. You had to be at the fully ascendant level before he'd start teaching you these things, or one of his ministers or missionaries that he had gone through this process with, who'd start their own church. They would take his role and do the exact same thing. They'd be like, okay, you got to complete this process, and then I can start telling you what he told me. So I believe, and we have no direct evidence of this that I'm aware of, one of the things he most likely did was he starts with explaining to them kind of how he does his magic tricks so that they could replicate it. He could be like, look, this is an illusion. Clearly and obviously, I'm not actually up here performing miracles. And he does actually say this at one point when it's brought up. There's someone who basically says they had seen Marcus doing miracles which they likened onto Christ. And he contradicts them. This is very interesting that he's like, well, you're wrong. I never have. I do magic tricks. I do illusions. If anyone claims I worked an actual miracle, that wasn't me. That was God working through Jesus through me. Because that's the only place like real miracles come from. Like you're seeing magic. Like miracles are something else. They don't confuse the two. So it's very interesting that they like took that concept of it. Makes him like a lot more in alignment with like mainstream Christian thought in that sense than some of his other teachings and practices. And he might have just like said that type of thing like out of self-defense, because they're accusing him of basically like sorcery, like witchcraft, and working with demons and things in order to do these miracles. And he also actually says to them additionally like that, they said the same thing of Christ. He puts it back on them and like references the Bible. He's like, they said the same thing of our Lord, so that's what you're saying of me. And I'm telling you, I'm not doing that. That's not what's happening here. It's just I do magic tricks, and anything that's actually miraculous is of God. But I think he would probably tell them, like, he'd throw back the curtain, like I said in the previous episode of the wizard, and say like, this is how it's done. Because in his belief system, there were tiers or levels of power, if you will, and up at the very top, to him, was this concept of there were like these two kingdoms or two realities. There was the kingdom of God, which was governed by principles like math and science. Like basically, like he'd be like, okay, this is reality, and God controls reality. And it works according to principles that he created out of himself. Like God divides himself into these different, what are called the eons, and the eons are representations, or if I can speak, personifications of concepts, and the concepts contain within themselves other concepts such as language and math and science and so on and so forth. And so we'd say all of that was inside of God or part of him, and it's what governs our universe. And that's the kingdom. And then we have the kingdom of man, which is contained within that. And you'd use kind of like an example of an egg. You'd be like, you got the egg, you got the shell, and like you got like the yolk in the center. So it's just these levels or layers. And our world is a world of illusion. It's ruled by what's commonly called within Gnostic thought the demiurge, which Marcus Magus himself referred to as the Great Archon, which I've brought up a little bit. I'll go into much more detail later. Of the archons that, in Marcus' thought, there was these 6 archons, which correlated to 6 deadly sins. But there was a 7th archon, which he called the Great Archon, which starts sounding kind of science fiction-y again, that he says is like sealed away in another dimension, and that's the one who generated the other ones. So yeah, that's basically like he's a god of illusion. There seems to be some disagreement and confusion here, because in most Gnostic thoughts, and I'll get into this more in detail later, and I'm touching on it now just a little bit about the specific beliefs. Demiurge is kind of like evil. He's what we might think of as a devil, except he's more like a god, that he's like a false god. Valentinus is kind of like, it just exists. It's just like, it's just a thing. It's just out there, It's it is what it is. We're not exactly sure that Marcus agreed with that. He seems to have deviated from his teacher quite a bit. So he might have been more inclined to say like it's evil. But he would say like the world of man, our world, is ruled by illusion. So it's ruled by this false being governs our rulers, our governments, our kingdoms, and so on. And they enforce illusion upon us. And he saw, particularly the Roman Empire, which was persecuting the Christians, he saw as just irredeemably evil. I brought this up before, that this is another point of disagreement, that Valentinus says, well, they're demonically possessed of a thought contagion. they have like a mass mental illness that's motivating them into being evil and killing people and so forth. And Marcus is just like, no, there's bad. We've got to get rid of them. So he thinks that like the rules of the kingdom of the government are coming from this evil source working through them, and that's what governs us. But he would say that all goes back to the egg, that it's layers within each other. That God's kingdom goes over that and rules over it. So we don't know like his specific beliefs or teachings, but we can make some like guesses or speculations. So something like money, you probably like point to that and say like, look, money. You know who's on there? It's Caesar. It's created by the government. It's created by the empire, who are evil. They're the evil empire, and they've made this money, and they're making us use it. So it's not real. It's an illusion. But the things that govern the money are math and science. Those are principles, and the principles are created by God. They're contained within the eons, which are the emanations or divisions of God. And so that's real. And so something that's real is governing what's unreal. And he would teach if you could separate those things and understand the difference, and say, look, this is fake. The money is fake, but the economics that governs money, that makes it work or not work, that's real because it's based on principles of math and science that come from God, and the money comes from man. And if you can learn the difference, then you could influence reality. That was his ultimate goal. Which is why he made you go through this initiation. It's almost like a test that he wanted to see, like, you're on the level, where he'd say, okay, you've got this goal in mind of we're going to build the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. He seems to have taken very literally, and he wanted to use magic to do that. And he defines magic very specifically, very interestingly, as a way of knowing and seeing, a way of perceiving. Because he says that's different from what they're talking about. When other people were accusing him of doing like witchcraft and sorcery, he's like, well, you're talking about like using demons and like making poisons and stuff like this. He's like, I'm not doing that. I'm perceiving. I'm practicing magic. I see things. And he said that was different from that was the real magic, and what he's performing, what's performative, is magic tricks. It's an illusion. And he's doing that as an example, as a teaching method for you to learn the difference. So this is what he started teaching you once you got initiated into it, once you were ascended. So another tier or level down below that is basically just and again, this is some of my own speculation based on what I've read of trying to reconstruct what we know or believe we know, is the power of names and the power of numbers. That he said, like every name has meaning, has origins, and if you know things by their name, you can have power over them, you can understand them. For example, in the Bible, Jesus talks to the demon-possessed person, and he asks the demon, tell me your name. And it says, we are legion, for we are many. And then Jesus has power over the demon. So he says, or the demons, plural, collectively. So Marcus kind of says, like, when you know something's name, you have power over it. That's the power of names. But he would say also that everything that's a word or a name also has numbers, because you could take the letters or characters and they would have number values, and you could break them down into their number values, which is gematria, which we'll get into a little bit more in that. And so he said if you knew the origins and meanings of names and words, and if you knew their number values, you'd basically have insight into them. So you could look at the world around you, and you could use that insight to basically gain knowledge into events, almost like divination. I'll get into a little more in that. Like events, past, present, and future. You would know things about what's going on in the world by understanding, okay, they're using this name or this word for this reason. and so I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna say something different, which is kind of like the abracadabra. I speak it into being, and basically be like, your magic has no power over me, because I understand where it's coming from. Like, I understand your words, your language, and their origins and their meanings, and like why you're using it, and ergo it doesn't affect me. So that's one of his other keys of power. So then, like, his next level down, he started into like Jewish and Christian, like Kabbalistic and mystical practices, where you start talking about like the gematria, like I was saying, where you take the numbers that a word contains and you add them up to get another number. It's kind of like in the book of Revelation, where it says, "Reckon the number of the beast at 666." It's the number of his name. So you say, okay, well, it's whoever the quote-unquote Antichrist, as we call them now, has a name that equals 666. This is gematria. So this is what Marcus was aware of and practicing, in addition to some of his other practices. And then the other thing he alleged to have done was possibly Bible code, which was kind of in vogue and popular a while ago, where they programmed a computer to find these words or phrases inside the Bible, like President Putin and Netanyahu and so on and so forth, where they'd say, okay, these are the leaders when the beginning of the end times happens, which they're saying like it's right now, like it's already been happening, if that's the case, since we have like new leaders now or ones who are going to come into power. And so Marcus was doing Bible code, and they used to just do it like ancient way, like go through and like circle characters in the Bible and like write it down and write out words per algorithms, per number sequences. And so like a combination of different arts. We know he also did some astrology and had intimate knowledge of astrology. And so by combinations of numerology and gematria and astrology and Bible code and practicing these different arts, he was alleged to have been able to predict events. Like, it would say, like, okay, there's going to be a rebellion or a battle or whatever is going to happen at this place at this day and time, and blah blah. And it would say, like, well, the clues are there, the evidence is there. It's in the world around us. You got to look at what people are saying, what they're doing, what's going on, in the signs and the portents, and then you can figure it out. And it was funny because the leaders of the time, they all hate him. Both the mainline Christians and the Roman Empire eventually agree they're gonna go get this guy, and then he just disappears. He's like, I'm leaving, I'm gone, I'm gonna go quest for the Holy Grail. Which I talked about a little bit previously. But they gotta make the accusation that like he's causing it. He's doing these things. That's how he predicts them. He's gonna have someone go like cause a rebellion in such and such town or province. And he's going to say, oh, I predicted it. It's magic. Like, that's what they thought was going on. And he claims that it was just the fact that he understood, like, how the world and the universe worked at, like, a deeper level, and was able to calculate it. Like, he basically just, like, wrote everything out in math, and went, okay, this is what's going to happen. So that's how the Marcosian magic system worked. And you wouldn't be allowed to be taught that until you were a full initiate. I think that was it. I think I covered like all the key steps there. He did include the Valentinianism a little bit. I forgot that. But to him, that was kind of like intro. It was Magic 101, Intro to Magic. You're going to learn what my teacher said. Here's your personality test. It's not that important to me. That was kind of Marcus Magus' approach. He was like, yeah, this is something that exists also, but it's not the main thing. So he did incorporate that. It was practiced within the Marcosian churches that they would do the personality test and like elemental alignments and all those kinds of things as well, and talk about how the different numbers had different meanings and correlations to each other, and show like biblical evidence and so on. That was just kind of like preparing you to accept the other teachings that were higher. So you basically have to see the illusions for what they were and realize that they were there, and also start getting into like a personal mystical practice of figuring out, predicting events, and like his thing was basically like trying to influence events in reality to produce a different outcome that was more favorable of the future kingdom, which seems to embrace this idea that there was going to be like a paradise on earth at some point in the future, and that's what the kingdom, the future kingdom or the kingdom to come is talking about. It's not somewhere you're necessarily going in an afterlife per se. And if it was, then in his mind it was through reincarnation, I believe. He does seem to have most likely believed in reincarnation because he seems to have believed that's how Jesus was going to come back. He's like, well, the Christ is going to reincarnate potentially through his bloodline with Mary Magdalene, and he's going to come back and destroy the evil empire, was Marcus's idea, or at least it appears so to me, and then rule over this new world that's going to come afterwards. And so he wanted us to achieve that goal, and so he thought that the only way you could like use magic in a principled way was to like push that end. Which some of his followers, like after his disappearance and presumed death, apparently don't, because the Marcosians become quite popular as like seers, and they end up basically getting like paid to predict things based on the methods that they'd learned from him. Like there'd be people who would go to them and be like, okay, tell us who's going to win this wrestling match so we know who to bet on, who's going to win this election, who's going to win this battle that's going to happen in this place. And they'd use the different combined methods that he taught them, or other people had taught them through him, to come up with answers and solutions. And it was like a very complex system that we don't have all the knowledge of now, where they look at names, they look at numbers, they look at dates, and look at all these different things, and like put it all together and be like, okay, the chart says this. This is what's most likely going to happen. And apparently they were usually right, is the amazing thing. Sometimes it was wrong, but usually whatever they said, okay, well this is what it looks like is going to happen based on all the information, evidence we have. Here's the names, here's the numbers, here's the dates, here's the location, here's all this and that. Boom, that's what happens. And so it almost appeared like, fate. And so they were relied on as like these predictors of fate, who could be like bought or bribed, I guess, to help people and influence outcomes in such a way as usually to make profit. So it becomes like almost like a negative thing. But yeah, that's I think I covered everything. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to get into next time, but it'll probably be more specifically about the actual like day-to-day what the churches would have looked like within the Valentinian and Marcosian churches, what like breaking down the order of they start out doing a song each day, and then they do this and then do that. I'm probably going to do that next time. So thank you again for watching. Have a blessed day.